Let's get back into the abortion debate, this time looking at Elissa Slotkin, who is running for Senate in Michigan in a debate against her MAGA adversary where she thoroughly exposes him and the overall dangerous anti-women's freedom position because we're of course no longer giving them the moral high ground of calling it pro-life.
I believe in a woman's right to choose. I did not support overturning Roe v. Wade. And if a bill came in front of the U.S. Senate to codify Roe, I would vote for it. But I think this is a really important distinction between the two of us. Mike Rogers was 20 years as a legislator. He voted for every single ban, every restriction, every bill that came across his desk to make it harder for a woman and to ban, in some cases, a woman and her right to choose. 56 times in total. We checked the math. To me, every single time he was casting one of those votes, he was saying something very particular. He was saying to women, he does not trust you to make your own decisions about your own family planning every single time. When it comes to our rights and protecting ourselves, I think it is important that we have someone in the seat who does that. He voted and sponsored bills that would make it impossible to have IVF and contraception. If he does not trust us to protect our own rights, do not trust him.
And that's exactly it. Trust is earned where trust is given. And he's saying that men, the government, needs to legislate control over a woman's decision, that we can't trust them to do this when, again, not a single law of the sort exists for men and their body and their decisions. And he stands to show the truth about MAGA outside of when they masquerade for election year, of course. They do want to go after contraceptions. They do want to go after IVF. The more control that they can impose over a woman, they will take it because it's about a larger picture, a larger scheme for them, which is shifting the Overton window to the right to where women can be stripped of more and more rights. It starts here, then next it's the right to vote, then it's this, and it's the right to work. This is why men who support abortion bans often also support repealing the 19th Amendment, who also don't support funding for childcare because it's not about life. If it were about life, they'd be pro-healthcare for all. They would stop letting people die homeless in the streets. They'd stop letting guns into our schools and into households with little restrictions. It's, again, part of a larger game to erode away a woman's rights in this country.
I was here in Michigan and I voted yes on Proposition 3. You were in Florida. You voted in Florida. You weren't here.
Proposition 3 in Michigan effectively codified Roe v. Wade into the state's constitution, no restrictions prior to fetal viability and after, exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. Her opponent instead wasn't there in Michigan, but voted to protect the 6-week ban in Florida, which, don't be fooled, is practically a complete ban. Most people don't even know they're pregnant until 5 weeks, 4 weeks at the earliest, and then getting scheduled for an initial checkup and then the actual procedure in, say, a week is practically impossible. This is just a fancy way of saying, well, we don't have a total ban, when in practice it effectively works out exactly that way.
Being unilaterally pro-life, of never breaking once with his party on this issue, right? So it's not a talking point to women. It is our lives. It's whether we bleed to death in a parking lot. It's who and when gets to decide how we have a family. Do not trust him.
We know maternal mortality in Texas has risen by 56%. We know that total maternal mortality is up 7% across America, 51% higher in states with physician requirements, 35% higher in states with Medicare funding restrictions. We know cases like Amber Thurman, where doctors are scared to do life-saving procedures because of possible interpretations of the law that could get them in trouble. We know of women going into sepsis before being able to receive care, women bleeding out in parking lots. We saw MAGA and pro-life people get what they want. And what we saw as a result of that is lots of death, immoral restrictions being placed on women, children carrying to term, negative outcomes for both babies and mothers, and it needs to end. And in November is where we can take the first real step towards getting there, not just through Harris, because obviously she can't do it on her own, but by voting blue down the ballot, putting in a House and Senate that will codify these rights and never having to do these debates with fascists anymore. And the future has a good outlook on this, because even if we don't get the seats we need in 2024, the possible map for 2026 with the seats coming up looks pretty good for us to take majority.